Welcome to our podcast, in which we explore some of the recent developments in technology, innovation, and research across Europe. My name is Marcel Bogers, and I'm a professor of open and collaborative innovation at Eindhoven University of Technology. And today I'm joined by Marie Brøns Nørgaard. Yeah, it helps when you have lived in Denmark for some time to pronounce the names. From DTU Skylab. So I'm happy to have you here. You're also one of our project partners in the Cooperate project. And I'm looking forward to discuss a little bit more about your experience in the project, what you're working on there, as well as learning a little bit more about the DTU Skylab organization you're working with. So that's also what's going to be my first question. If you can say a little bit more about your role and what DTU Skylab is doing.
Yes, I'd be happy to. The DTU Skylab is the innovation hub at the Technical University of Denmark. We have existed for 11 years and have evolved actually much in the way a startup would, which I think is a kind of a fun part of DTU Skylab's story. Started out as a basement project in the central administration and is now a 5,500 square meter innovation house with both prototyping facilities and startup guidance and innovation guidance, both for students and for researchers.
And your role in
my role is as a project manager for currently for Cooperate, but for these types of projects, EU projects, where we seek to sort of write the recipe for how to be successful as an innovation ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And in that sense, is it mostly focused on, let's say, very local projects, or I mean, also European ones, obviously? Is there like a balance there, or maybe depends on the project, or?
Of course, it will depend a little bit on the project, but generally speaking, we are most interested in projects that have an international perspective, or certainly an international perspective, but preferably also international partnerships.
Okay.
And consortia. Yeah.
Okay. So, and when you say so, you are there for the students and the researchers. So then I'm just trying to see, okay, how does that all fit together, right? So I understand the projects are mostly international, but of course you're also focused on the students as one of the clients, or if I.
Oh, certainly. So we have. I suppose you could say we wear many hats in DTU Skylab.
Yeah.
And our core task is to support innovation in the university. So that is either students or researchers, or a combination of the two, that have an idea or a bit of research with exploitation potential, valorization potential, that can come to us, and we can help them build that into something that can make a difference in the real world. Often what we see is that the researchers are extremely talented when it comes to the research, but don't always have the commercial, customer-oriented perspective as well. Sometimes it just doesn't interest them. In that case, we can sometimes match them with team members that have more of that interest and that skill set, or we can help them develop that skill set themselves. So we have sort of capabilities in that direction, both for researchers and for students.
Yeah. Now, I think that's interesting to hear. And then also, of course, at different universities, there can be slightly different models in terms of how you really, work with the students, with the researchers, from the technology transfer, valorization point of view. And as you say, you've been around now 11 years, I think you said.
I think, is it maybe even almost 12
could
actually?
Be more, yeah.
Time
okay,
flies.
Yeah. And then you mentioned so that it had a kind of a startup vibe to it. But is that still the case? Because maybe more than 10 years, are you still a startup? Or how
I
can
think
we...
that's definitely very much still part of the DNA of DTU Skylab. But of course, in those 12 years, we've grown quite a bit, both physically and in terms of headcount and responsibilities and so on. So we have become a little bit more structured and organized, or definitely a lot more structured and organized now, our approach since then. But I think we still very much identify us with the startup spirit, and it's also one of the things that makes it extremely inspiring to work in a place like DTU Skylab, is that there is so much creative energy, and I mean the sky is the limit. So many dreams and ambitions.
Yeah. No, and I mean I know a little. I mean, I've been there, of course, and I mean, you can also look at the website, right, with all the the organization. Then you see quite some people involved. So that's great to see, and that's often the thing that may kind of prevent to keep the startup spirit there. But apparently, you find a way to do that, and I think that's really nice to see.
Yeah.
Maybe being around the students also helps a little bit. That's at least my own experience as well.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So you say, you work with the students, with the researchers. So that's, kind of two of the tracks. In what way you work more with organizations, let's say, yeah? And I think this is through some of the projects, like the Cooperate project is one example. So is that the main vehicle, and how you work with that in that sense?
So we facilitate innovation in many forms, and one of them is certainly also working with the industry. You can maybe think of Skylab as sort of the open door space where the industry and the sort of university's inner workings meet.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of collaborations with the industry, both in terms of some projects that we do in collaboration with the industry, but also in terms of innovation activities, innovation sprints and hackathons and so on that we sort of host in collaboration with the industry.
Okay.
So we work a lot with the industry in many sort of different formats.
Yeah. And if we connect that to the topic of ecosystems, that we're also working on in the project, Cooperate project, then maybe we can sort of define it as a network of these different kinds of stakeholders that complement each other. I think also in the way that you describe, and there's kind of a joint value in a way you can create something together that you cannot do by yourself. But in general, sort of how do you see your role in that? I understand what you say, sort of different activities. Do you really see yourself as an orchestrator in that ecosystem, or does it maybe depend on the project?
We see ourselves, or this is sort of my interpretation, like as a central node where the different actors in the ecosystem meet. And of course, we're very focused on the university because we are part of the university. But we work in collaboration with someone like, for example, Science City Lyngby, who's an interest organization and association in the geographical area of Lyngby that was founded, I think, actually also 12 years ago.
Maybe not a coincidence, don't you?
And they are also sort of a focal point of the triple helix in the area, connecting the university and research institutions with the industry and the municipality of Lyngby, sort of tying that into the geographical area where we're operating as well. So an organization like them also really facilitates the interconnectedness and the collaboration between the helix players in the area. Yeah, so definitely.
That collaboration creates kind of an interface also towards the rest of the triple helix, as you describe it.
I think what we have in common is that we're places where the players of the ecosystem meet and interact and build relationships and trust. I think trust is one of the very sort of prominent features of the Danish ecosystem, sort of in a wider sense. We enjoy a high level of trust in Denmark, both in each other and also in sort of the system, so that if the trust in each other should fail, then the system is sort of there to pick us up. So it's in that sense it is easy to build new relationships, new collaborations in Denmark because we are quick to trust each other.
Yeah. And then you see that a bit differently in maybe other regions, or?
I would assume so. It's not something I have first-hand experience with, but yeah, I think that's something that we sometimes encounter in some of the regions that we work with. That it's not as integral a part of the culture.
Yeah. Now I think we see it coming back even in some of the podcasts as we are recording them. That certain regions, if they have high level of trust, it's easier to make those connections. It really enables a good governance of the ecosystem or the network, and because it's very much about sharing knowledge flowing between those partners and jointly going for that shared goal, let's say. And that I think aligns very much with what you describe also with Science City Lyngby, how you collaborate really with the regional focus, and I think that is part of your mission as well, why you exist there. I don't know, maybe it's a difficult question, but how does that compare maybe to other regions in Denmark? Can you say anything about it? Because you share to some extent, of course, some commonalities, but there are also other ways of working.
Yeah, I think Lyngby and Copenhagen that are in many ways sort of the same ecosystem, of course, enjoy the benefits of being the capital region of Denmark. So that does give us an advantage, so to speak, in terms of attracting talent and attracting investment in the area and so on, because we have critical mass. Yeah. But that being said, the other sort of university cities in Denmark, the main ones being Aarhus and Aalborg, they're also coming up very strong with their innovation hubs. They have sort of similar institutions to DTU Skylab in their respective universities, and we also work together because we're a small country. We gain nothing from competing. We gain everything from collaborating. So I think that's it's definitely something that is that's also coming up.
I understand. Yeah,
and is already strong and is gaining strength also in other regions of Denmark. Certainly.
Yeah, I think it's a bit similar to some extent, like in our context in the Dutch system as well. And as you say, it's small countries, so it's better to collaborate than compete definitely, in that sense. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to talk about definitely was in relation to our Cooperate project. Yeah. Maybe you can say a little bit more about what your role is in that context and some of the things you're working on there.
Well, at the risk of tooting our own horn, Denmark is ranking strongly in the European Innovation Scoreboard. So we are doing quite well. Everybody can do better, but we like to think we have something to offer in terms of trying to formulate what it is that we do that works, that we can try and translate to other ecosystems, other cultures, to try and sort of collectively lift the European region as a research and innovation stronghold.
Yeah.
So our contribution specifically from DTU in the Cooperate project is to develop a playbook and toolbox that is a concrete tool or a set of concrete tools that an ecosystem can apply to sort of elevate their maturity within these 7 different aspects of an ecosystem that we're specifically looking at.
Yeah.
So that's sort of writing the recipe is the recipe for success.
Exactly.
It's a very, very tired term, but it is something along those lines that we're focused on in the project.
Yeah, I think in the project we also see, of course, as we just touched upon, there are differences between different regions. So, different place-based ecosystems, there are different characteristics. So part of the objective is also to set, to develop a set of tools that you're working on, but also in different domains, right?
Yes.
And
that is very much part of the challenge of the project, to make kind of one size fits all that's still specific enough to be actionable and to be useful. And it's something that I at least also think a lot about when we develop the tools, like what are my Danish biases, the things that would work without a hitch in Denmark, but might not work everywhere, and try and see if we can accommodate those differences.
Because I think some of the tools, you had a toolbox, for example, for teaching and working with students or with the researchers and the companies, right? So you could build already on those. So and I suppose that has helped to have in some domains some starting point there. Do you have any like examples of a type of a tool? And maybe not, we can talk about the ecosystem context in a minute, but even what work with the students or the researchers, just to get an idea of what kind of tools we're talking about.
Sure. We have something in DTU Skylab that we call a mini sprint, which is a short and sweet innovation sprint. It can be executed in a day. And it's one of the, I don't want to call it a light tool that we have in the toolbox, because it can be quite impactful. But it's one of the tools that we have that can be implemented in a fairly sort of short time. We also have tools that would take years to implement. So there's sort of a very broad range of tools that you can sort of hold on to. But the mini sprint and its older sister, the open innovation, also an innovation sprint. These are tools that we use in Skylab with students and in the industry. We have industry partners come in and give a challenge, and then we have students work on that in a particular format.
Okay.
That's something that we use and that we see as quite successful, and is quite well reviewed both by the students that participate and the industry partners that pose the challenges.
No, I think I've seen some examples of concrete things coming out, so that's really nice to see. And I think part of the challenge is also then to translate them to an ecosystem development perspective, right? So which is more a network of different types of organizations. So where have you seen so far also some of the challenges, like what makes a different that we try to target the whole the development or the maturity of an ecosystem? I mean, where are some of the differences and challenges from your experience?
I think the main challenge, sort of coming back to culture, is that no two ecosystems are the same. Ecosystems are different and are characterized by very sort of different ways of doing things and cultures. So what we thought would work might not work, and that's also some things that we're trying to test in the project, to see how can we make this fit in different contexts. And then I don't know, this also maybe coming back to bias, that we are a university innovation hub. We have a university innovation perspective. So things that work in our university setting might not work in other parts of the ecosystem. So that's also sort of a perspective to try and be holistic in the approach to the tools that we have, that there should be something that different ecosystem players can take advantage of.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think in the project we'll also try to find the best way. Like if we talk about let's say the orchestration role, who takes that. In a way, I think we've seen also that indeed a university can play an important role as kind of a central node in the ecosystem, especially from a knowledge valorization point of view, right? How to create economic and social impact. So that's also where that's maybe part of the solution also, right? So if you have such a stakeholder involved, Yeah. It has some similar characteristics, dealing with some of the same stakeholders.
I think it makes a lot of sense to have the university at the center of the ecosystem, also from the cooperate project perspective. The university has sort of the size and also the permanence to be a meaningful center of gravity in the ecosystem. They are usually long-lived and have it's called like they're believable, like they're plausible. Authorities, the credibility. Thank you. Yeah, that was the word I couldn't find.
Yeah, and kind of a stable factor in the system, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I think we talk about many interesting things. The role, the university, and ecosystems in general. You work on the toolbox, playbook that you're working on in the Cooperate project, where of course we will have much more to share and tell that will hopefully help. Also very interesting to learn about your work at DTU Skylab, and I thought maybe before we conclude here, maybe you have some advice. Let's say maybe for universities who don't have a Skylab yet. What is your, from the startup?
Build one.
Just do it, right?
No, I think it's a really powerful thing to have an innovation hub for sure. But I also acknowledge it's not something that you just build overnight. No. I think the startup support is a good place to start, to try and catch all of the good ideas that spin out of the brains of university students and employees, and try and capture that and support that. I think is really is a very meaningful place to start.
Okay.
Yeah. And take pains to build trusting relationships in the ecosystem, because I think that's maybe my personal belief that trust is at the foundation of everything when it comes to building something together in the ecosystem. So invest in trusting relationships.
It's really that investment in building relationships, and it's not something that comes with a snap of a finger, but it's really something you need to build over time, right?
Yeah.
It is. So be persistent in that, and
exactly. And
to some extent, just do it. Just
doesn't necessarily work the first time. Then keep at it. Again, this is not something that happens overnight.
Okay. Well.
Yeah.
It's good advice. Thank you for all your insights.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks to our listeners and viewers. And we'll see you at the next podcast. Thank you.